Welcome to episode 243 of Real Therapy, where we talk about how movies make us feel. I'm Donavon Thompson with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
Today we discuss Marvel Studios' latest effort, Thunderbolts. We talk about whether the film is another hit or miss for Kevin Feige, and stick around to hear our thoughts on how the film does or doesn't tackle mental health. This is Real Therapy, and you know what that means.
They're gonna talk about how it makes them feel. They're gonna watch all the movie reels, cause it's Dan and Don in Real Therapy. It's real.
Hey Daniel, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Donovan. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's a good day because, and this used to be more frequent, but it's been slowing down lately, but we're getting to talk about another Marvel Studios effort. And I'm excited about that. And so,
Yeah, it's been a while, right? I mean, I guess Captain America was the last one, but that was a bit of a dud of a conversation, at least on my end. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to dig into Thunderbolts, a movie we were really excited about. And I'm really excited to share our reactions. But first, you know, we're still a pretty young channel audience-wise, and it would really help us out if you could give us a like, give us a share, subscribe to the YouTube, subscribe to one of the podcast feeds. Anything like that just really gives us a bump in visibility. And we would just really appreciate it if you could take 10 seconds and do that for us. But let's get to the show. Let's get to the good stuff.
yeah. So we also had, and keep in mind, we also had Daredevil Born Again after Cap, before now.
But doesn't that feel separate though? Doesn't it oddly feel like it felt like more in line with the Netflix show in some ways? And yes, there were still the Marvelisms in it, but in a weird way, it almost feels like different universes, or like, I mean, maybe that's just a symptom of all of Marvel feeling a bit disconnected right now. But you say that and you're right, but for some reason my head doesn't just be, oh yeah, that was MCU. For some reason that just doesn't connect immediately in my head.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct, and I'm really just bringing it up just to be like we did have more content between now and then, but I agree with you, and I think also it might be another indication of how well or well not the show hit. You know, what I'm saying like
Yeah.
you've kind of didn't bring it up, you know, versus if we were talking about Star Wars, you absolutely would have brought up Andor, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, Thunderbolts, you know, and real quick, I want to talk about, you know, my expectation going into it, and then I want to give kind of like an overall view of it, and then we can kind of get down to some of the likes or dislikes, and then some other stuff later. As far as, you know, the movie, you know, trailers are the first thing you see for a film, and they can make or break your first impression, obviously. And Marvel has always been typically pretty good about making some banger trailers. And I thought this one, like they were repurposing some older 80s, 90s music and, or whatever they call it, they remake them or whatever. And I thought they were just awesome. I thought the action was looking good. I didn't really care so much about these characters, but
Right.
they were pulling on enough threads for me to be like, this might be something special. And so going
Yeah.
into it, I was more excited for Thunderbolts than I was Fantastic Four, First Steps.
Mm.
And so even though like I feel like First Steps would be a better movie, I'm just more excited for Thunderbolts because I don't really know exactly what it is. And you know, I just there seems to be some type of unknown quality there. Going into it, I've seen it twice now. My first time solo, second time with you, and you know, I do enjoy the movie. You know, and liked a lot of aspects of it. I think there is some weird narrative things happening in terms of just like how long we're in certain places, and at the end of the day, I felt like it did enough for me to want to see that team moving forward. And if Fantastic Four First Steps can be a good movie, if it can be a hit, then I think Marvel might have enough momentum to lead into Doomsday and make another, you know, successful pair of Avengers films. So what are your thoughts on Thunderbolts?
Yeah. I mean, I think coming into it, my expectations were tempered, but excited. I agree. I liked the trailer. I don't remember much specifics about the trailer, only that it felt more confident. I feel like it's so often you see trailers these days, and it's just like the most insecure trailer in the world because they're showing you every good part they can, and they're just telling you the plot in like literal three-act structure of the plot just in the trailer. And to me, that screams we're not confident in this movie. Whether it's we're not confident people will see it, we don't think it's actually like it just screams insecurity. We're not willing to tease you. We've got to give you like the whole appetizer in order to try to entice you. And they didn't do that with this. I felt like I didn't know exactly what the story would be, other than it is, essentially a Suicide Squad like. The bad guy anti-heroes get together to do something good. Like that's kind of the general idea of Thunderbolts. And yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. I think one thing that it had that has not been present in a lot of recent Marvel stuff was just chemistry. Really strong chemistry between the cast, like the quips, the back and forth, just the personalities and how they bounced off each other was just really good. The actors did a really good job, and it was just fun to be with them. And I think that is so, you think back to the first Avengers, like all the Avengers movies, they had that. Even Age of Ultron, that has some flaws in it, the chemistry's wonderful. Like in fact, some of the inner team arguments is some of the best of the whole universe, just within that chemistry. Some of the arguments between Cap and Tony and Bruce and all that stuff was so good in that movie. And that can carry a lot, like just being with characters you like that interact with each other, that feel real, that feel fun. It's funny, it's quick, it's scintillating, it's sharp. There are all these digs going back and forth. And so this movie really had that, and it was a nice return to form for that. I do think we're still seeing the effects of Marvel not really knowing where they've been going this chapter, this what is it, phase or
This
whatever
is
it is.
phase 5. This is the end of phase 5.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the big bad, when it comes to Sentry, when it comes to even how the movie ended, there was just still this feeling of we don't like when you get to the end of a lot of movies at the end of the Thanos saga. It always feels that we know exactly where this is eventually going to head. We're always getting a Thanos tease or an Infinity Stone tease. And it was always done with this confidence, like, oh shit, they really know, they really have a plan. They really had this sketched out. They're teasing us just the right amounts. And with this one, like we got some teases, but it all still feels a bit like, okay, that was a tease, but it still feels like everything's a little muddy still in terms of direction, big picture wise. And I think some of those issues still bled into it a little bit. I do think there's some interesting things narratively, like structurally. But overall, I mean, I would rate it a solid B plus, probably, like an 85 plus out of 100 for me, where it's just like, I would watch it again, probably just for the chemistry, just because I enjoyed that enough. I'm not dying to watch it again. There's not really anything in the plot that was like, oh my God, now this is changing the universe as we know it. Nothing really there. But it was made well, it was acted well, and I would watch it again. So, for what Marvel's recent track record is, this is pretty damn good.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of talk about here the narrative and the pacing and the tonal shifts. One thing is pretty interesting in this movie, and this is one that out of all the MCU movies, like maybe in the last 5, 6 years, this would be the one I would want to break down the most because it's so interesting of how long we're in this vault by Delafonte or whatever her name is, Fontaine, and
Yeah.
Allegra Delafontaine, I guess. And so I feel like we're in that fall where she's going to kill all the Thunderbolts and all the evidence because she has this Congress hearing going on, her impeachment hearing. And so she's trying to sweep it all under the rug at once, right? And I feel like we're in there probably for 20, 30 minutes in this one location. Did it feel that way to you? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
I know
maybe it
there's
was
an
like
opening
45.
here,
I've only seen it once, but it almost feels like it was half the movie to a degree,
right? We did
yeah.
get some tee up, of course, with Yelena doing her missions, her narrative, and of course, I
Yeah.
think she is the protagonist at least in this story, if there is one of the group.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
we're getting her a little bit of, I think, Red Guardian, who I love, David Harbour. He's just fantastic in the role. And then we're getting some Congress stuff, but we're kind of into this vault thing relatively quickly, probably after the first 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But I thought it was that's odd. I thought like we're in this thing, and the whole point is to put these characters, which I do want to ask you also, like, do you think there's a disconnect here? I mean, you were even asking me, who's that character from? And I was like, Ant-Man and the Wasp. And then like, we
Yeah.
have three characters from the Black Widow film, Yelena, Red Guardian, and Taskmaster. And
Yeah.
then the other one, John Walker, is from the Falcon Winter Soldier spinoff show.
Yeah.
And then Allegra de la Fontaine, she's also from a cameo from the Falcon Winter Soldier, and she's like in a basically a cameo in Wakanda Forever.
She was in
So
something else too, right?
I think that's it. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think she's in anything but those two because she's
She's
like,
in Captain America, the
is
recent one.
she? I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think she shows up at
Doing
least
do,
one. Does she
doing
not?
what? I don't think
Or
so.
maybe she's mentioned.
She might be mentioned. I don't remember, but
Okay.
I don't think I've seen it like three times. I don't think she's in that. But I'm saying like it's just how do you feel about putting these characters that we people I don't think people really probably knew where they were. They probably like, oh, that's in something, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
plus how do you feel about the narrative in terms of going from that? We go from that set piece kind of to Bob and the final thing. That's really the two main locations of this film.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a very little like kind of them transitioning in between. Um, yeah, I mean, it is interesting structurally, but I think it's, I guess to me that's a credit again to the chemistry. It didn't feel long in the tooth either, though. I wouldn't say I was in the movie theater being like, man, when are we going to leave the vault? Like I was
Sure.
enjoying myself. You know what I mean? And so I
You
think
were
that's,
laughing quite a bit at John Walker,
I
Wyatt
think he's
Russell.
fucking hilarious. I think I
You're
really do
laughing a
like,
lot, and I was like, "Oh, he really likes him."
I
Yeah,
really like Wyatt Russell. I think he's hilarious in like a pessimistic, like just asshole way that just is so fun. I just think it's such a great contrast to Chris Evans' Cap. Like it's the perfect yin to his yang in so many ways. And I've loved his performance. He probably is one of the best, him and Yelena and I would say Red Guardian are like my favorite castings of this group. Like just like, man, I
for
would love
sure.
to see that character and that actor show up pretty much as possible, you
Yeah.
know. And I mean, I can't wait for what we will originally get or eventually get, which is a badass moment with Chris Evans and U.S. agent. Was it U.S. agent? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Like when they team up for the first, like there's going to be like I can see it now. There's going to be tension. They could even fight each other at some
I didn't even
point.
think
But
about
there'll
that.
be a
You're right.
moment where they look at each other and like, let's do this, and it's going to be this like. I can't wait. Like all blacked out, hardcore Cap versus red and white Spanx, patriotic Cap kicking ass together. That's just going to be,
Hey, there's a version in Doomsday where we get Hydra Cap, and it's going to
oh
be,
man.
it's going to be Sam
It's
and
Hydra
John
Cap
Walker.
versus John Walker.
There's a version in Doomsday where Tony Stark slash Victor Von Doom is assembling evil variants.
Yeah,
You
no,
know, I
very,
don't know that, of
very
course, but
possible.
that's a very possible thing. Like that reprise roles, but play them differently. And of
Yeah,
course, then in Secret Wars, you bring everybody back together.
right,
You know,
right. But anyway, yeah.
but
So going back to what you were saying, like structurally, yes, it's a little weird, but like again, the chemistry was working. And I'll say one of the highlights and surprises of the movie was Sentry. Was what was his
he's my favorite
Tom?
part.
Is that what was his
Bob.
Bob? It was so simple.
I like Tom also though.
Yeah, but it was just like
Yeah,
such a simple random name. Man, that
yeah,
actor absolutely killed it.
yeah.
In
Lewis Pullman.
and he had such a range to act through, right? Like he had to go from like insecure mental patient to like egomaniac god. You know what I mean? Throughout this movie, he had to kind of and go back and forth, not just once. It wasn't just one change. And man, he stole like his acting was incredible. His chemistry with everyone else was incredible. His story was interesting. Like even just the nature of his powers is really interesting and not just. It's a lot more interesting than just Cap. Cap's just strong, and this guy is one of the strongest people ever, but he's got multiple personality disorder potentially, and like can't control it, and like you know what I mean. Like it's just like an interesting character for this universe because he's not just straight laced black and white, And yeah, man, I think it is. I think it's the chemistry of the team with him, which now I guess he's a Thunderbolt. Now it seems like kind of officially, unofficially.
Yeah,
That really worked so well that like the structure just it didn't really register to me. Like I wasn't ever really aware of the movie structure, and that's how it should be. Like, and that's really hard as a filmmaker, being so tied into the inside baseball of everything. It's really hard not to be like, oh, I just felt the first act end. You know what I mean? Like I had that moment all the time. Like, oh, this is an act break. Like I can just feel it in the tempo, in the pacing of the movie. I didn't really get any of that with this, and I think that's a good thing. It's typically not a great thing when I start noticing the structures of the narrative. It's much better if the narrative is so engrossing. I'm in it. I'm not aware of anything else. So I give the movie credit. I think it does well with its unconventional structure.
I mentioned this to you, I think, before after we saw the movie, but in terms of Lewis Pullman, I was most excited about him coming into it because originally Stephen Young, I believe is his name, from Invincible and
Yeah.
Walking Dead fame, he was cast and he dropped out for whatever reason. And when they announced Lewis Pullman, I was like, man, he's gonna be perfect. Like I knew he was a
What
good
else have you seen
actor.
him in?
I've seen him in Top Gun Maverick,
Okay.
but I've just seen him like I think I've seen him in other small bit things like or just interviews, and I was like, that guy can act. You just look at people like
Mm.
that guy can act. I know he can.
And he has
And
the jaw of like an 80s action hero movie star. Like he has this like,
yeah, but he has
you know
like
what I mean?
a masculinity, but also like he seems like someone who is very vulnerable at the same time.
Yes. No, and I think that's what's so interesting. He has that like again, he looks like a leading man struck like facially. Like his
Yeah,
facial structure is very good, I guess.
yeah.
But you're right in that he projects a lot of a vulnerability really
In
well.
Top Gun Maverick, he was kind of he was very good at his job being a pilot, but he was also kind of he was wearing a mustache, had glasses,
Mm,
and he's kind of like the guy that's like, he might be the nervous one to approach a girl, but in the time of need, he'd be a badass pilot kind of
gotcha.
thing.
Yeah.
And he kind
Yeah.
of has that same kind of energy in Thunderbolts. But yeah, no, I agree with you in terms of the structure doesn't matter a whole lot just because for the fact that the chemistry was so good leading into this. I will say I want to talk about two things. One, um, Delafontaine, or I'm probably saying her name wrong, DeFontaine or whatever. I thought her Congress staff and just kind of also what Bucky was doing. Like we didn't really get a whole lot of like Bucky failing as a congressman. We're kind of alluding to it a little bit. Maybe we
Yeah.
didn't need that, but it kind of felt like, again, where we're seeing highlights of a universe and we're not really seeing what these characters and how they're affecting the MCU really.
Yeah.
Maybe it'd been better to see like what Bucky's actions as a congressman could have affected. And I guess the point was he hasn't done anything yet, but I needed to see
Yeah.
him do something.
No, we needed a more there wasn't like there needed to be a bigger moment when Bucky decides to say like fuck the bureaucracy, I'm the Winter
Yes.
Soldier again. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because
100%.
he has a badass entrance, right?
Oh yeah.
We needed a scene 10 minutes before where he's in Congress and he keeps getting frustrated and like he
Yes.
like bangs too hard and cracks something and then in realizing I'm the fucking Winter Soldier, why am I going through the Congress? Like we needed that
Yes.
look
You're
on his
right.
face. And then he shows up out of nowhere, and then it's like, oh yeah, you're the fucking winner. Because there was this moment when he's doing all that stuff where you were like, wait, he is the Winter Soldier. Like you think back to like the shit he was doing in Winter Soldier, where he was like an unstoppable killing machine. Like
Yeah.
no one could touch him. Like he was just like the perfect Black Ops.
Well, he's the Terminator, is
Yeah,
what he
yeah,
was.
he was.
Yeah.
And so like you see these moments, you're like, oh yeah, he's the fucking Terminator. Because he was good in Captain and the Winter Soldier. Sorry, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't have a moment like he didn't do this. He didn't have this kind of moment where he just shows up and takes out everybody by himself. And you know what I mean? And I think you're right. We just needed more of an emotional setup for that to feel like it was cool. I enjoyed it. But it could have felt really badass if they had
Yeah.
set it up stronger with him getting more and more frustrated with Congress of just not making sense for him. And then just seeing that moment where he like, you see the look in his eyes, you're like, he's about to do something. And then 10 minutes later, he shows up and saves the day. Like that would have been a much better version. And
I do
I
agree.
will say, I mean, this movie did have some developmental. Did it go through a little bit of development hell with rewrites and anything like that?
I'm not aware of a whole lot of
Okay.
changes. I know that there was some stuff maybe during the writer's strike, whatever, where they
Yeah.
kind of change Ghost, no, Taskmaster's kind of
Oh
arc. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
she's
yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
removed from the movie. But my impression
Thank
is they
God.
were shooting it and they were looking at it like, hey, we need to have. I think they didn't shoot a whole lot of her scenes before they changed them. If that
Okay.
makes
Well, I'm
sense.
just what I do. It just the all of the Congress stuff. Just I do feel like it felt a little more pulled together last second. You know what I mean? Like in terms
It
of
felt
like
like
it felt
some
like more
glue.
reshoots.
It felt like
Or
glue.
yes, yes, yes. And in a way that like yeah, you're like I mean this one of these scenes could have been shot 2 weeks ago. We wouldn't know, before the movie was
Yeah,
released. But that stuff just felt like a little bit like we'll figure it out when we get there, and it never
I
quite
agree.
came together as well as it could have. So
No, I agree. And one other thing I want to kind of talk about here, in terms of narrative, is the ending of the film
yeah,
where and let's not talk about like what it means, but just traditionally a movie like this, we would have our heroes at our lowest point, and we'd have a giant big, 20, 30 minute
yeah,
ending, right? The
yeah,
Avengers, the Chitauri would come through the portal, and then we would fight all
yeah,
the Chitauri, and blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
We'd fight the big bad. This is the most unique, I think, so far in terms of blockbuster superhero genre, where when people start dying, vanishing, whatever, it's really just a movie where we're talking. Like, yeah, they punch chairs and rip pillows in half, but really we're just kind of talking about our feelings at the end. And I think it's where it's getting a lot of like praise in terms of like they're tackling this. But how did it feel? My question is to you, did it feel anticlimactic in terms of a payoff of like a big fight or something like that?
Um, maybe there's a hint of that, of like ultimately the real antagonist was De La Fontaine. What's her name?
I don't
And
know,
she
Delafontaine,
kind of got out
Allegra.
scot free. She kind of found a way to get around everything, especially with how
No,
she
and that was
introed them as the
clever.
new Avenger. That was clever. I like that as like a plot choice. Like
I like her
I
standing
like
there
how
being
she
like,
did
"Oh,
that.
don't get me,"
But
and
there
then,
is a little
you
bit
know,
of yes, that was great. And Julie Marie Dreyfus is the perfect. Like it's like there's
she's
not a
great.
better actor to do that kind of role.
Yeah,
It's like
I
I'm
agree.
pretending to be faint, but I'm actually
I think she
conniving.
had some rough dialogue. I think her and the
Yeah.
assistant, like they were, but I don't think it's her fault. I think it was the
No,
dialogue.
again, that's the part where it's like the whole Bucky and assistant thing, which it felt like were they trying to hint at a weird romantic undertone a second there two there, but then didn't
I
there
don't
was
think
just some
so.
weird there was just some like stuff that like didn't work with all that
Yeah,
stuff. I
I
agree.
agree. I agree.
But there is like a little bit of like, you know, I actually like it when we redeem the bad guys at the end of the movies. You know what I mean? I think that's typically my preference. But
Not mine.
usually then we get like an extra bad guy to go beat up instead.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like we get Ultron, or we get like this other thing that just needs to get the shit beat out of it because it's just real bad. Whatever. And so I do think we could have used that
That's
in
my
some
kind of
way.
ending. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like right, like
I know.
like we
I'm
could
just
have
playing.
used like the government sending in a robot hero that ends up
And then
getting
here's
out
our
of
big
control,
finish. Yeah,
and
yeah,
now we
yeah.
can beat the shit out of this and not feel bad. You know what I mean? I did think that it is nice to have that in my superhero movies, like just a badass beat the fuck out of this thing and don't care.
I
But
do like their Avengers moment or symbol moment where it's like, and it's to me, it kind of felt very symbolic when like the debris is falling and they're saving people. And we are teed up with this by
absolutely,
Guardian saying like, there's nothing, I'm getting chills actually thinking about it. There's nothing more gratifying or worthy or important than saving people's lives.
yeah,
And
yeah,
whenever they're doing that and that big like piece of wall
yes,
and they
yes.
start all pushing it, it just felt like this is a team that has been pushing against the wall their entire life.
I
You know?
agree. I will say, just pushing a giant wall over as an action, I felt like we could have done something a little cooler there.
The end of it, I think it's because the end. Whenever the thing falls and reveals them, the shot isn't spectacular.
Well, and
The
it's
moment they're
just
pushing, I think, is good. But
and just
yeah,
what they're doing is it's just they're just pushing a wall over. The person already got out of the way. In theory, they could just move out of the way, let it drop. Like
yeah,
like that.
it worked
Like
for me. That worked for me.
I wish it was more of a like. I don't like some. It just at the end of the day, it wasn't that impressive of a feat to push a wall over. I just think if we're having an Avengers moment, don't push a wall over. Like do something more grand is kind of what I would hope for.
Hey, is there a better version out there? Absolutely.
Yeah,
In my
that's all I'm saying.
sleep, I could think of it. But I'm just saying. But I'm just
It
saying it
worked.
works
It
for me.
worked. The emotion, the moment worked. There was just that one moment of like it feels a little anticlimactic when they just end up making this wall fall over.
Well,
But
well, back to the end is the end when we're kind of having this Bob thing, and like going through these
yeah,
mindscapes.
yeah.
Does that work? Did that work for you? That feel anticlimactic at all?
No, I don't think, like, again, like I said, like, I think there's part of me that after that happened, we just wanted one guy to beat the fuck out of for 5 minutes that we didn't have to feel bad about beating the fuck out of. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I do like a little bit of senseless violence in my superheroes. Just a little bit. Just a sprinkle of senseless violence.
Yeah. Couple
But
toppings of.
yes, yes. But I mean, narratively, no, I think it felt very satisfying. Like it worked really
Okay.
well just for this to be the way they kind of get to him. You know what I mean too? Because I think they did well with the whole like Yelena when they were in the vault, kind of understanding him and get like kind of trying to like other than again, one of the funniest parts to me in the vault was like most of them trying to kind of like understand Bob, and then like US agents being like, what a fucking dumbass. Like he was just like berating him like, what the fuck, Bob. Like he was just like constantly like treating him like a nobody, and I thought that was really funny, especially knowing who he would become or whatever. But yeah, I thought, and even
I
they did
loved
some
when
good
Bob.
chemistry between them.
I love when Bob stood up to U.S. Agent, and he
Yes.
was kind of like, you're not Captain America. You're an
Yes,
asshole."
yes, yeah. Like
I
that
love
was
that.
really good stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think it really worked then for it to be they all have to come together and be nice to him, even U.S. Agent, to bring him back from essentially to not die to save the world, or at least New York, wherever they are. So
And I don't think in the sidebar here, I don't think U.S. Agent is inherently an asshole. He was not an asshole in Falcon Winter Soldier. I think he has just been.
I think
He
it was a
he
little.
wasn't.
His
He
attitude
wasn't.
was assholish. He was an
I
asshole in
don't.
his attitude, even if his actions at the end of the day you can justify. How he did it was very much asshole.
Well, no,
He did it with
he was
this. I'm
never.
better than everybody. Fuck
He was
everybody.
never portrayed as someone who would talk down to somebody in Falcon Winter Soldier. I
I
don't think so.
disagree. I disagree. I
He
think that was
definitely had.
absolutely. He would talk down to people he
I
thinks
th
he's better than. I think
I th
absolutely.
No, I mean I think that you're kind of you're putting on the Thunderbolts narrative onto that because in Thunderbolts they really play up like he's constantly mentioning his football career. He's constantly mentioning he was Captain America.
Well, they
It wasn't
definitely
like
play it
that.
up, but
It wasn't like them
I'm not
Falcon.
saying he said all that stuff that in there. I'm saying the kind of character he portrayed in the
Maybe.
TV show, none of this felt unbelievable. Yeah, we didn't get those kinds of lines constantly. They really were like they were using him honestly as comic relief half the time with those lines. It wasn't just making him be an asshole, it was making him be funny. And
Well,
and and,
my
and
point was, it felt like he had gone farther now since Falcon because of all the things he's had to deal with of becoming,
which makes complete
ostracized,
sense.
which makes sense. Yes, that's what I'm trying to
But I
say.
guess what I'm trying to say is he's always the kind of character that would ended up like to me he was always this underneath. Even at one point he was
Oh, he
more
was always
confident,
destined for that, is what you're saying.
or just this is always who he was underneath. Even if he was able to before put on like a more political front.
Gotcha.
This is always what he thought, even if he didn't say it. That's how this read to me. Is like this
Gotcha.
is always what you're thinking. You're just now don't give a shit anymore, so you're just saying everything you think out loud. But you are
Maybe.
always thinking this way. You always felt
Maybe.
this way about other people. That's
Maybe.
how I read it. So that
I don't
yes,
think I'm there, but maybe.
that's
I can.
yeah. Anyway,
It's fine.
that's just how I read it. But yeah,
I do kind of want to talk about, the big, we can talk about the mental health aspect at the end of this, but before that, I do want to talk about, and this ties into the finale we're talking about, where we're basically Bob is touching these people. We already know from previous movies some of the struggles they've done. We know from the beginning Yelena's problems of, not feeling like she's part of a family or feeling like she's
hmm
alone or abandoned and she just doesn't really have no purpose in life. Do you feel like the film kind of earns its emotional resonance by the end of it with these characters specifically? And the only really narrative thing we're getting besides, Yelena's, I can't think of her name, Yelena's voiceover and some of her conversations with the Guardian, we get these moments with Bob where he touches them and we're getting like a framework of, like, say, John Walker neglecting his
yeah,
child and,
yeah.
yeah, her basically going through a red room
Like
scenario, and
remembering her early, like her first kill,
yeah,
essentially.
do you think those kind of things were enough to kind of put us in a place where we empathize with these characters, or do you think we should have pushed a little bit more or got a little more backstory? Again, we're coming in a place where we've seen everything about these
Yeah.
characters. What do you think?
I think it mostly works. I think it's somewhat necessary, even just to remind us what Yelena's backstory is. Like, we kind of need a little bit of refresh. Oh yeah, shit, that was bad. Because like, who remembers Black Widow? No one. So
Yeah.
also the reason why it was the smartest decision to kill Taskmaster within the first 5 minutes, because no one gave a shit about that character ever. This was
The
always
opposite. They wanted her to die.
Yes, this was the best. Kill a good guy that no one gives a shit about. That's the best way to do it. At least in terms of like just getting rid of them. So yeah, I think it worked. I hear what you're saying though. Like, there is a little bit of like, if you, in some ways, the group had an arc more than any individual character, and a lot of that was carried by Bob. You know what I mean? In terms of like his journey is what carried along that journey. And we got a little bit of like these like moments between Yelena and Red Guardian where she's like, you didn't call for a year, like this kind of like, you abandoned me. He's like, I didn't think you wanted to be around me. Like, so we're kind of getting a little bit of that, like that she's lonely. And we get that from the monologue in the beginning, and they're all just, we do, I think, get this sense that these are all people that don't have a team. They don't have people. They don't have best friends, superheroes, whatever. They're all loners, right? And I think the flashbacks do a good job of reminding us why. I do think John Walker's flashback was maybe the weakest. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like the flashback showed us he's not a good dad. and I think it was nice seeing him recognize that. He was watching it and seeing, oh, wow, I am an asshole kind of moment.
It seemed like he was consumed
I just think
by
there could have been
everyone's
something
perspective of him.
Yeah, I just think there's a stronger way to do that than having
I
a
agree.
dad be on his phone when he's supposed to be watching the kid. Like, in some ways, yes, that feels realistic. That feels like, oh, probably half the dads in this audience do this shit. But
Oh, I hope
at
not.
the same
when I see it, I'm
time,
like, I think it's a weak example for him, and also I think, or weak flashback. I also think that it might have been an opposite effect where it pushed too further to like make him unlikable. Because
no, see,
I'm kind of like, oh man, does people really do that? They're just on their phone while their kid's crying. I mean,
yeah, I
don't know.
agree. It felt a little too on the nose in that way. Right. I
Maybe,
agree.
yeah.
And again, I kind of wish we had gotten something from him, like seeing people talk shit about him, like seeing him
I agree.
be
I
like
agree. And this
seeing
is where it
him,
goes to
and maybe, yes,
Bucky's problem, the universe not like
yes.
all these events are happening in a vacuum, and the movie takes place half of it in a vault. And it's like we're not getting the perspective of the universe, which is one of my
Yeah.
big problems for this universe at the moment.
Yeah. So it works. And it was interesting that like, I guess part of Sentry's powers is he can just like,
Do everything.
he can just go into the past and see what's bothering them kind of stuff.
I really don't know.
I don't
Here's
know.
another thing too. Like on the flip side, I thought was didn't go far enough or whatever. Not flip side, I mean, it's in line with this is Fontaine. It's like, okay, her dad gets murdered because of keeping a secret or something like that, and so it puts her on this
I can't even
path.
remember her flashback. What happened?
Yeah, she's just watching her dad basically get killed by some other guy, and it's like he was like basically withholding a secret of some sort, and so the guy
Yeah, I
kills
don't
him
even
because of
remember
it.
it. So that tells you how much of an impact it made.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so it felt like we're trying to give her some
Make her
backstory,
slightly
but I don't
likable.
even know what the backstory is. I don't know
Yeah,
what that
and I
is.
think that's, getting into the trauma aspect, to me in some ways, like I like what they were trying to do, but to me in some ways this feels like a symptom of the word trauma and mental health kind of losing some of its accuracy in the zeitgeist of discussions today. Like, people throw around trauma like anything bad happens to me, I'm traumatized. When there's actually a clinical definition of trauma, it's when anything overwhelms your ability to cope. Right. And that looks very specific. If you're able to eat your way or drug your way or in some ways do these other things out of trauma, that can kind of prevent trauma from like big T trauma from happening. Right. Yes, you went through a hard season. You fell on some bad habits or whatever. But trauma is something that literally makes you like almost comatose emotion. Like, you don't know what to do, you can't function normally. Like, it's a very specific thing versus like, like, it's this thing of like, if a parent dies very young, but you have a really strong support system that really helps you through that, you probably weren't traumatized by that. You know what I mean? If it's like especially as kids, when kids don't have these support systems, they don't have like their go-to therapeutic hobbies, right? Like as adults, we develop these things that help us get through things, whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's exercise. We start developing these skills that can help us get through rough emotions, that don't make them overwhelm us. Kids don't have that because they're kids and they barely have like half a brain developed. So they just don't even know what to do when trauma happens. So they need a strong support system there to guide them through that, right? And so I just feel like we're now in this world where like if anything negative happens when you were a kid, that's trauma. You know what I mean? And it's just not true. At the same time, childhood trauma is incredibly frequent, especially when you look at low income, when you look at, segments of society that already don't have the resources they need to take care of them. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's an epidemic, might say. But I do think this film, where it's like it's touching on mental health, but it's doing it in this way where it's just like it's not really saying anything about it, and it's just kind of using hard moments to make characters empathetic, and like that works, but I feel like the part where it feels like it's trying to say something or like be relevant to the mental health discussion, it's like nothing of value was stated here. Nothing of value. Like you didn't really get into anything. You just kind of touched on hard moments, and they make people mad sometimes. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just didn't feel like a very intelligent discussion on mental health. It just felt like kind of a surface level. We're just using this as like a plot device, not as something that we actually have. It just didn't know, like, it didn't feel like they knew what they were talking about at that part. And I think that's very common amongst just like modern mental health portrayal. Mental health and depression and trauma is a hot topic in some ways. It's a very common thing to talk about. Even like there's this trend of faux vulnerability that I think that like online influencers and all these people have realized that people that are vulnerable can attract a following, like people that are authentic, you know what I mean? Like have an easier time getting people to listen to them. And so like they're all faking this authentic. It's like, it's like back in the 80s when everyone pretended to be perfect. And that was like, that's just what men were and superstars were. And like, movie stars were. Nothing was wrong. They have everything in life and they have no faults. Now it's like hot to have all the faults and to point out every single thing that's wrong in your life and call it trauma. And this is the way I am. And so I just think it's like we've gotten to this thing where the discussion has kind of lost some of its meaning. The words have lost some of their meaning. And I think this film feels in line with that more than in like any of the intelligent discussions that are happening in movies and TV about mental health. Like I even think Hacks handles it much better. You know what I mean? And that's a comedy.
Hacks is a 4-season television show.
No, yeah, sure, but like when it does it,
with not superheroes.
It sounds like it's being written by people that have actually gone to therapy and done the work, rather than people that have talked about going to therapy or have done it because of a trend. That's what I'm saying. The difference is the people that write it that feel like, oh yeah, you've actually gone to therapy, you actually know what it's like to work through shit. That is, to me, night and day from the people that like use therapy as a prop. And I think that to me is what Thunderbolts felt like versus what other shows I've seen were like, okay, yeah, like this writer knows what they're talking about. They've actually been to there. They actually have done it. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of that even in your favorite show with Harrison Ford in it. Like there's some
Shrinking.
Shrinking is like the most, to me, what's so bothersome
Shrinking.
about it is none of it feels like real therapists. Like I'm like, no self-respecting therapist would ever act like any of these people. Like that's what bothers me.
That's also part of that's what the point of the show is, that these people are.
I know, but like it doesn't make them likable to me. Anyway, that's a different show.
Well, it makes them likable to me. So
that's fine.
I do want to say, and this is one of the parts I was most interested to hear your thoughts on. It's something we did not talk about, and even because I saw it the first time and going into this, like, oh, Daniel, I'm curious as to what Daniel's thoughts on it. I do want to give them a little bit of flowers for even attempting to talk about mental health, whether they hit the mark or not. And the thing I want to give them the most flowers for is, I like the idea at the end when Yelena is basically, he's punching himself, right? And Alina is on him. And there's a version of this movie where that moment ends and then he's fixed. You know?
Sure.
There's a version where it's like, oh, if you get a hug and people tell you it's okay, it's all done. And like the work's over.
Sure.
And it's a very, like, I think very small peephole view of like how working through your issues, people
Sure.
like, and so I
It's not
applaud
one and
them for,
done.
it's not one and done. And I
Yeah,
applaud them for being like, hey, on top of that, he can't even turn into the Sentry because of the fear of whatever, which I
sure,
think is also, you know, that's other problematic issues too, in terms of
sure.
like that character is not dealing with his darker half, right? It's like
Or yeah, or like
symbolically.
in some ways it might say that like once you're traumatized, there's something you can do about it. You just have to avoid that part of your life, right?
Exactly. And
Like,
I think
but I hope they're
that
going to develop that and go somewhere more interesting.
I think is we're just in a place where we haven't got that far in the
And
journey yet to
also,
see
it's
what that means. So
and
yeah,
also at the end of the day, this is a superhero story, not a mental health story. Like, and
that's my
so
other point. Yeah.
that doesn't bother me as much because it's like, well, it doesn't make sense for his character either, just to be fixed. That would just make his character really uninteresting all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think you're right. I think that I don't give them as much credit as you do, just because to me it's hot to talk about mental health. Like, I think there are people, there are money pinchers, there's bean counters that say we need to talk about mental health because it gets more money. That's why I don't give them too much credit, because I think that's happening so frequently that it's
Well,
like
it's also
you didn't.
that's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like, I mean, what
Yes, but
you can't. I mean, like I don't think. And yeah, you're right. There's always in every business a group of people, at a certain level that are just like, what is hot right now, and how can we make the most money, and how can we generate good buzz?
uh-huh.
I do think the movie got a better Rotten Tomato score because it talked about mental health. Whether it talked about it successfully or not, it
Agreed.
got a better score because it
Yes.
talked about it.
Yes.
I do think that their intentions, at least the filmmaker, I can't think of his name, we even talked about it, the director. I think that their intentions are probably purer than what you're giving them credit
I
for.
am sure that the people on set directing these scenes and probably even the writers are doing the best they can. What I'm just saying is that I just think either we needed writers that actually know more what they're talking about, or we just need to not touch. And I'm not. I'm not mad it's in there. It's not like offensively bad. It just feels a little bit more eye rolly to me than it is like, oh wow, they're really trying here. It's more like, okay, yeah, we gotta.
Well, sometimes
Everyone's
people
talking
have
about
to
mental health
take
this
the
day. We gotta.
first step, so then the other ones feel like, oh, we can do this better, and let's do this better now. Like I mean, what I'm saying, like
I guess
I'm
so,
not
but like
excusing
to me, even
anything.
like Loki does mental health better, and it doesn't even actually specifically talk about it. Like the Loki TV show is much more of an interesting journey of like a character going through depression and anxiety and lack of self belief and trying to
I
figure
don't
out who
think
they actually are.
Thunderbolts doesn't really talk. They don't really talk about mental health. They just kind of talk about how they're
I know
feeling.
it feels like set dressing. I think that's my point. Is like it feels like set dressing versus a show that's digging into the process of what mental health is.
But also, that's like an 8 hour movie
Listen,
versus a
I'm not.
2 hour movie.
You're right, but that to me says we either do it right or we don't do it. Like that's still my like, and I'm not fully saying that because I don't think it works as a plot device. I don't think it works as an intelligent conversation starter about mental health. And I think we should separate the two, saying yes, you use this in a way that helped the movie. You didn't use this in a way that's like generating. You know what I mean? Like this
Well,
is this
I
wasn't.
don't think
I
every
don't
movie is
necessarily.
supposed to carry the torch for society.
It's
That's
not.
also my
But
that's
I'm
my also
also
opinion
not
on
going to
the
give
movie.
it credit for adding anything to the conversation. I'm saying yes, you used it and you used it well for the movie, but
I didn't say it
but
did add to the conversation. I'm
no,
just
but I
saying
think like you
that
said, like it's getting better reviews because it mentions it. I'm not giving it any more credit because it mentions it. I like the movie
no, I'm
because of
not
the
either.
movie parts.
Yeah.
That part I'm like, okay, well you did that to get your brownie points and because it worked as a plot device.
Oh, so
I'm not interested in what you were trying to say because I don't think you were really trying to say anything.
yeah, again, there may be like, evil corporate lords that are doing that, but also I think the people on the ground are probably like
Well,
trying their best,
I agree, but sometimes it's like they're not informed enough to do it right. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying,
Well,
well, it's their fault they got hired for the show.
exactly.
But I can also react to it and say, this could have been done better if you wanted to. If you wanted to actually say something worth saying, you could have, and that didn't happen for whatever reason. And I'm not saying again, I liked the movie,
Yeah,
85
no,
B
no.
plus,
And you're
right?
and you're
It's
and
just I
you're
can still say
entitled
that
to, yeah.
it could have been better, and I don't give it any credit for what it did in that area. That's just me.
Yeah, and to be fair, again, this was the question that I was most curious about from you before and after we saw the movie.
Yeah.
And so, again, I have way less stakes in it than you do, I feel like, in terms of how much I care about them representing things correctly or not. Because also
Yeah, well,
I'm not as, but also it's because I'm not as informed about it as you, so I don't have as
sure.
much stock in it all.
Sure.
So
I've gone to therapy for many years. Yes.
well, I mean, you're also married to,
A therapist, and was
a
the son of,
therapist.
the son of a therapist. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm
And
not as
the
close
son
to
of a
it as you.
therapist and a social worker. Yeah. Got it from all
Yeah.
sides.
So you're a little more in depth than most people.
You're right. And so I'm probably not your average moviegoer's opinion of it, but
That's a good thing.
yeah, it is. And like to say is like, I'm not bashing the movie for this. I'm just not giving it any credit for it. Like that to me is like, this isn't a detractor, but it's also not a bonus. That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
I do kind of want to talk about final thoughts real quick on the film. What are your thoughts on the movie as a whole? And then also, are you excited about Fantastic Four? Are you excited about this team in Doomsday? Because we did get a stinger that, from what we understand, was shot by the Russos a few weeks before the movie came out. And may or may not be in the final film of Doomsday. But what are your thoughts on the film and the future?
I think the film, what it does well, I'm excited to see it do again, which is the chemistry and the characters. I think this does have some of the more interesting characters just in the MCU right now, these kind of anti-hero characters. And so I think it did that well. And I think, some movies aren't, no movies are perfect. And some movies have this perfect balance. It's got great structure, great characters, great plot. And that's why it is. Some movies, really stand on one of those legs. And I think this movie really stands on the leg of the character chemistry and the characters. But that works, and I want more of that. And I think that would work really well. Cameo, like thinking about Infinity War and thinking about how every 15 minutes we join a different group. Yeah, this is one of the groups I want to be checking in with during Doomsday. I want to see what they're doing. I want to see how it's going. I want them to be a part of the actors kind of pushing the plot along, because I think they're good and it would be fun to watch them react to all this shit. I'm still very excited. I'm still more excited about Fantastic Four just because of the importance of those characters to the universe. The fact that, this is in some ways seems to be Pedro Pascal taking the metaphorical reins from Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man as far as just the leading protagonist that's pushing everything forward in the universe. And so I just think Fantastic Four has just more potential to be important than the Thunderbolts in terms of what happens and what those characters are going to do in the future and how it's setting them up for those arcs. And it's just like the cast, man. Like, I think it's just a fantastically casted cast. Like, I cannot wait. Like, I think all of them are great. And so I think, and they're just iconic. I mean, it's the Fantastic Four, I grew up seeing rerun cartoons and, seeing the Fantastic Four meet Scooby-Doo or whatever the shit was going on at the time, and so there is just something about I'm excited to see how these characters are reinterpreted, because we haven't gotten an amazing film version of these characters. And it feels like we might really get that this time. I love the 60s aesthetic. I'm really excited about it. So yeah, I mean, I think, all that to say is this movie did make me more interested in the MCU as a whole. So I would say it's a success. You know what I mean? I think that has been the biggest problem with these past few projects, is that, yes, there's been some redeeming qualities of everything they put out. There's been something good. There's been something in it, whether it's the action, the characters, the writing, here or there. But at the end of the day, I leave those being like, whew, not really itching to see what's next. You know what I mean? Like, it just does not leave me with a taste I want more of in my mouth. This did. And that's nice to have. Like, I'm trying to think, what's the last MCU thing that really did that? Maybe Loki, maybe the final season of Loki. I mean, No Way Home was the last Spider-Man. That one definitely did. But other than that, most of what they put out by the end of it, I'm like, I hope they get this shit figured out. Not, man, I can't wait to see what they did next.
It feels so removed, but it feels very moved
because that one felt so final, and it felt like we're never going to get James Gunn's Guardians again. Sure. So it almost feels like I'm like, are the Guardians going to be good without James Gunn? I don't even know. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of a question there. if you told me we're getting more James Gunn Guardians, then yeah, I'd be like, yeah, I can't wait. But just the fact that that's not happening anymore, I don't know what to expect with them. But
Well,
yeah,
I meant like in terms of like being a good movie, a good outing
absolutely.
for them.
But
Decent,
still,
good enough.
and at the same time, I would still say that's the weakest of the three of the Guardians movies. If that had been the best
I
one
may
ever,
agree.
maybe I would be feeling more hyped about it. But because it kind of felt like I still like 1 and 2 a little better, that may have tempered that. But going back to your original question, Thunderbolt's a good movie. I'm excited about Fantastic Four. I think Marvel did what it needed to do with this movie, which was not fuck it up and make it like really bad, like memeable bad, or just like make the fans hate it. Like it did enough to make us like it, want to see the characters again. I'm good on them. I'm happy they did this well with it. This property is one that I think is just, this was a good opportunity to do something different and to get people a little bit more engaged. And I think they did that. So kudos.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, ultimate at the end of the day, I'm pretty much aligned with you, and I enjoyed the movie, and I
Yeah.
think that you're right. The moment, the character scenes, the character dialogue, their interaction with each other is really what carries it for me. It's not something where I think of like Iron Man, where we're on this really tight journey of a
Right.
character, and there's also these really amazing standout moments. It's one thing about Thunderbolt is that there's just nothing. I'm like, I cannot wait to watch that shot again. Like,
Yeah.
at least
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
love it or hate Deadpool and Wolverine, which I do really love it. I am obsessed with Hugh Jackman turning to look at the camera in that cowl when they're
Yeah.
holding
Yeah.
hands.
Sure.
There's just something about that shot. And it don't
Yeah.
and a lot of MC movies have that. There's, even No Way Home is full of them, Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just even watching Willem Dafoe laugh while he's getting punched for a second. Like there's
You're just
things
reminding
like
me of
that.
that scene. That's like one of the best scenes Marvel's ever done.
It's
Is that
crazy
moment
good.
where Norman's on sabbatical, honey? I think that may be my favorite line in the MCU. Like as far as like how well
Yeah.
it's written, and then the acting. It's just like I'm just thinking about it. I'm like I need to watch that scene again right now because it is perfect.
It's really good.
You got an
And
Academy Award-winning actor to do that, and like that, I can't get enough.
yeah, it's fantastic. And my point is like there's nothing like that in Thunderbolts, but it's very serviceable. And again, I think at the end of the day, I'm most excited about Sentry and where we go with him and just
Yeah.
seeing Lewis Pullman. And I'm actually honestly more excited about his career now of like what's he going to
Yeah.
be acting in and like after this. And
Yeah, I
I
was
think
looking at his
he's a character
credits.
actor.
He hasn't done like a big, like he's done some TV shows.
Yeah.
He did some other small, like not big roles. This feels like the biggest role he's probably done as far as just being like showing his range and just being on a movie that a bunch of people saw. It's like a popular thing. So yeah, I mean, I would expect him to get a lot of work after that, and I'm excited to see what he does.
Me too. And as far as the overall universe, of course, I've always thought Fantastic Four will be the better film. I
Yeah,
also think that it's nice because it's in its own pocket universe, and so we don't have to worry about my problems with like referencing things are going on and
sure.
this character is doing this and that because now we're just starting basically with the blank slate.
Yeah,
And I think the good thing about Thunderbolts is their interaction with each other, and so that will definitely carry on in
right.
Avengers Doomsday, and hopefully Fantastic Four can kind of, give us like you're talking about that passing of the torch. It only took them 20 movies and TV shows from Endgame to get us this
Yeah,
moment,
yeah.
but I'm hoping that when Doomsday happens and Secret Wars happen, we're at a somewhat of a soft reboot of the universe.
Yeah.
I hope it's not all X-Men focused. I know it will be heavily mutant focused,
Sure.
but I do hope we are getting some of these mainstays like Spider-Man and Cap and
We
Iron
got
Man.
to.
And
We got to have them included. Yeah. I mean, like, because that's why I want the X-Men, not just to have the X-Men, because I want to see Spidey in the X-Men. I want to see
it's only because I want to see
Iron Man in the
Spider-Man and
X,
Wolverine and Iron Man
Cap
together.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I do love the X-Men. Like, those are some of my like earliest like
Yeah.
superhero movies that I love. Like as a kid was like, oh my God, Wolverine, not Wolverine the movie, but like seeing, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine was one of those moments as a kid where you're just like, this is awesome. This is how I pictured it in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a kid watching the comics. And so, yes, I want the X-Men, but I want them with I want to see them interact with everybody else. I don't want us just to be switching to the X-Men for a few movies.
There are a lot of interesting rumors. I mean, there has been every week, it feels like,
Oh
for
man, I bet.
Spider-Man Brand New
Yeah.
Day.
Oh
The
yeah.
most recent rumor is pretty interesting, but we might say that for another a podcast
Sure.
where we can really dive into that. And also, it's not confirmed. We may just be blowing
Sure.
smoke somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
I
Hate to get our
do.
hopes up and then we get something worse.
Yeah, and again, that story has changed every week. The villain,
Oh
the
man.
people in it,
Yeah.
everything about it. And so, I mean, Doomsday and Secret Wars were just pushed.
Yep.
Spider-Man still has this day, and so what was thought to be multiversal now may go back to what the original thought was,
Right,
which is
right. And
street level,
happen
which I think,
right before, like it leads up to the
yeah,
moment. Yeah.
which to me was always the best route, was a street level
Especially
thing.
from where you left him.
100%.
We need a more grounded Spider-Man movie after
Yeah.
No Way Home, I think.
And we still may not get that. We'll see what happens. They do like
Right.
money, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before we go, we do like to highlight one last thing for our audience that may or may not be film or TV related. Daniel, what
Yeah.
do you got?
So this week I'm going to highlight a show I just finished, and I know one that we'll be talking about soon, which is The Studio. We just finished that last night or the night before. Really enjoyed the ending of it. I think as the show goes on, it feels a little less realistic towards the end, where by the end it feels like I don't think this has ever happened in Hollywood a little bit. Like the
Sure.
beginning, I feel like you're like, oh man, this happens constantly. I bet. And then like the finale is a lot more just like like just ridiculous. It's hilarious, but it's also just like like it's just off the rails a bit by the end, and it works. But it's like you're like I surely nothing like this has happened. But yeah, man, what a great show. I mean, it seems like how they're taught. Has it been confirmed for season 2?
I don't. I feel like I saw that, but I don't know.
I've just seen Seth Rogen saying he wants Daniel Day-Lewis in season 2. And so that
Good
to me
luck.
just inferred.
Good luck, dude.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. But like, also if he could get him, what a get. But yeah, I just
It
was
would be the get. You
yeah,
know, and
yeah.
there's this real quick. There's a story running around that Marvel is trying to get Daniel Day-Lewis
I
to be
saw that.
Magneto, and that's not.
No
It's
way
not
in
correct.
hell.
The original report, which could be not even true, is they're wanting a Daniel Day-Lewis like actor, and then every
Right.
other place has picked it up, being like they're trying to get Daniel Day-Lewis.
That
I'm
is
like, God,
you're
this is
just describing the Hollywood news cycle. That's how it works every
that's
time.
what it is, but it's just ridiculous. You're just
I
like, holy
agree.
cow.
I mean, that to me, in some ways, some of these discussion places for this kind of stuff have lost their value because that's all that happens. Is you get these stories posted that aren't even true. Everyone's arguing vehemently about why it shouldn't happen, and it's not even real. It's like,
Well, I was going to say that same day you would get, here's why Daniel Day-Lewis is perfect to play Magneto,
yeah.
and then an hour
Here's
later
why
from
Daniel
the same
Day-Lewis would never
website,
do this. Yeah,
yeah, or how he would be terrible in the role, you know, and
right.
you're like,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just clickbait bullshit
I hate it.
journalism.
Some of my favorite websites have degraded, or disintegrated,
Yeah.
whatever the word is. They have completely just lost their way, and I'm like,
Yes.
it's really sad. It's really sad.
It is
Anyway,
sad.
yes,
But yes,
yes,
the
yes.
studio, really fun show. Again, like I think the beginning, it's a really interesting look at like filmmaking. By the end, it just feels like it's kind of becoming its own bombastic reality, and that's fine. I think that's probably what the show needs to do to not be just for the inside baseball people, right? Like I think in some ways the fact that it's getting more unrealistic gives it a better chance of attracting a wider audience
success. Yeah.
than it is just staying kind of being like real realistic but funny. And so yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm assuming we're getting more just because of how Seth Rogen's talking about it. He seems to be like kind of peaking, a new peak for him career wise. He was also what's funny is, and this is a small aside, it feels like everyone is like just taking turns being on each other's shows. Like Catherine O'Hara was in this. She was in Last of Us. She's in Hacks as a cameo, and then Seth Rogen was in Hacks, and he was all like, and like, who's the lady that plays the main lady in Hacks? She was in The Studio at one of these later episodes.
Yeah.
You know, so it almost feels like I'm watching like 3 different shows, and all the same actors keep showing up, and it kind of feels like this surreal, like, wait. Oh yeah, he was just in that other show. Those 2 characters were in a scene in that other show, and so it's just kind of this like everyone's just taking turns being in each other's shows. But I'm excited for more. I think Studio is really unique, and I hope we get more. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited to
what do
finally
you
catch
have
up.
before we go?
Mine is it's a writer emergency pack by John August.
Ooh.
from the show Script Notes with John August and Craig Mazin, who is
Yeah.
currently a showrunner on The Last of Us. This is a really cool thing you can get on Amazon. You can also get it through johnaugust.com. But it's like, I think like 60 or so cards, like an actual deck of cards. And basically it's a way to get out of writer jail, right? It's a way to basically like you're stuck on a scene, whatever, and you kind of shuffle these cards and you can pull something out and it might spark inspiration. There's two main cards, one of them being like a image card or a detail card. And basically, like example, this one is for travel. So it's like, hey, like maybe your character can go travel somewhere, you know?
Mm,
And so it says like a change of scenery can do wonders. Take your hero somewhere new. And it's just something
mm,
to kind of be like, okay, maybe my character can go to the coffee shop or go to
right.
Italy or something like that. And what will that do to that character? How will they react? And will that get you out of, again, rider jail? The other
Yeah.
kind of card is more detailed description. It's kind of asking you to basically participate in a thought experiment about your character. And I think it's a really cool way to just, for writers to have. I feel like I'm a self or a non-practicing writer as always. That's how I always feel about it. And I haven't used these yet, but I do anticipate at some point just to do it for just to say I did use them. But
Yeah.
I think they're a really cool little thing, and I've actually already bought this for a gift for somebody else and for Christmas last year, who's also a writer, and she says she's used them. She says she really loved them so far. So I think
Cool.
it's a really cool little thing. Again, we may put a link in the description for the product on johnaugust.com. So yeah,
Awesome.
and as mentioned before, make sure to like and subscribe to Real Therapy at youtube.com/@realtherapypod to show your love and support. And of course, whatever podcast service on, if you can leave us a review, that would be super, super helpful. As always, Daniel, I had a great time talking to you about anything, but particularly Marvel Studios, and I'm very
Yes.
excited for, I think our next big movie will be Superman.
Oof.
And we're like a month and a half from that. And so
Wow.
exactly, or less than a month and a
Yeah.
half, really. And so that will be very special. And I think that will be the one for the whole year for me. And I
Mm.
really hope my expectations aren't too high.
I hope so for you as well. Yeah,
Thank you.
and mine too. Yeah. I mean, what next week is Last of Us? Is that what's coming up next?
Yeah, we have Last of Us, and we have our old colleague Jason Miller going to come back and
Yeah.
discuss season two with us. And I
Thi-
just finished it last night.
I think
Yeah,
it's gonna be a pretty juicy discussion. I think
I
there's
did
been
too.
a lot of online division between the
Yeah,
opinions, and so I think our listeners should definitely be back to check that out. Whether you liked the show, whether you've seen it or not, there's going to be a lot of as someone that's never played the games and has no sentimental attachment to the IP. I feel like I'm assuming my opinion is going to be quite different maybe than yours and Jason's, who have a much more attachment to source material or what
maybe.
you know.
I think
I'm curious.
I think we'll be in a place like we were last year, where we're all coming at it from different perspectives, which I love.
Yes, exactly. I think that's going to
Yeah.
make for a really interesting conversation. So be sure to come back for that.
I agree. And of course, we have other guests lined up after Jason with other juicy podcast topics, and I cannot wait to get to those as well.
Yum, yum.
My name is Donovan Thompson,
My name's Daniel Wingfield.
and we'll see you at your next session.
Real Therapy is brought to you by 241 Studios and viewers like you. Thanks for stopping by. Remember to tune in every Friday at 3 p.m. for a new session with Daniel and Donovan. And remember,
They're gonna talk about how it makes them feel. They're gonna watch